Hey, everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your World show. Today is July 23rd. I am your co host, Chris Alba, and Larkin's going to be joining us shortly. She got um, caught up with her horses this morning, so she's running a little far behind. Um, but definitely wanted to come on here and get started. Today we have an interesting show. We're talking about trusting and developing the relationship with your inner guru. You know that um, we all go through these life experiences of what we're taught and what we're conditioned and um, um, what we experience, right? And this kind of helps set up a duality in a way in our mind that allows us to look backwards in hindsight and look at the experiences that we've had. And the more that we're willing to sit in these experiences and feel the feelings and have the thoughts, just observe the thoughts, right? It's not attaching ourselves to an identity, not attaching ourselves to well, this is just the way I am. This is the way, and nothing's going to change, those types of things. We have to develop within us the curiosity um, to go beyond what we know, which is what seems to be the now. But as we've talked about on the show, and science has proven, about 95% of the day we're working through our subconscious mind, which is our conditioned past. That's how we got here, and to truly be um, present is to be consciously aware of those thoughts, those feelings, those repetitive cycles that we've experienced in the past. Get curious about it and go, well, is this really true? And does this have to remain true? Working in recovery for myself and helping other people through recovery, what I needed to do for myself was to create a new identity of who I wanted to be. And that started out when I was quitting, let's say, just cigarettes, and saying, I uh, I'm identifying myself as a non-smoker, but I still occasionally have a cigarette from now and again. And people would ask me, well, how can you say that? How can you? And I don't smoke I'm a more of a non-smoker than a smoker, because I'm only a true smoker when I'm smoking. So now I just focus on smoking less and stepping more into that higher vibration, that higher self, that person that I want to become. And it can be challenging sometimes, because when we identify with our thoughts as that's who we are, that's the way it has to be, that closes down the abundance and the infinite possibilities of what we can create beyond this moment. That's really stepping into the void, into the unknown. So, when we get in an argument or a disagreement with somebody, and it seems like we're stuck in our identities of, well, this is how I feel, or this is what I think is best, and vice versa, and our truths aren't really aligning. If we are to get into and to move into harmony, it's to get curious and ask questions. I've shared this story before. When I was in high school, I used to walk with the Sharps, which is Skinheads Against Racism and Prejudice, and we were fighting for equality, and standing up to anti-racist movements. And there was a situation where I had a friend who had a friend who was a Nazi, and we used to have a lot of challenges. And it wasn't until she basically sat us both down and said, I'm not going to be your friends unless you guys talk this out and talk. And we had a heart to heart conversation, found out why he felt the way he did and why he thought the way he did. And same thing for me. And what we came to the conclusion of is, he wasn't, he felt anger because he was shot by a group of African Americans for being a white guy in a predominantly black neighborhood, African American neighborhood. I used to promote clubs, and one of the clubs that I promoted was mostly African American. And it's interesting that every time anything ever went down in that club, it was always my fault, even though if I wasn't directly responsible. And this is the challenge that we have by living through our past conditions and through our past identities of how we've been taught to live. When we are able to trust our inner guru, our inner self, our higher self, we radiate our own truth. And what we can discover beyond that is the limitations of our truth, because there's things that our ego is going to be challenged to accept. And that's where the work comes in. That's where gratitude comes in. That's where awareness comes in. That's where unity comes in. And what I mean by that is when we're grateful for diversity of thoughts, diversity of feelings, diversity of backgrounds, skill sets, those types of things. When we come into the awareness of these diversities through unity, which means inclusion. It doesn't mean exclusion. It means inclusion. We come together for a common reason, a common goal, a common vision. And that is higher than our individual selves. So we still own our truth. We can still be challenged. We can still be inspired. We can still be all these things internally. But our efforts, our attention, our energy is going beyond ourselves and our identity. And that leads to a higher truth. Now, that being said, this is an example of outside experience. You do that internally as well. You have to get still. I'm not a huge fan of guided meditations. I do enjoy journeys and things like that. They're fun. I love lucid dreaming. Work with plant medicines, all those things, and they're great for creating stories and visions and inspirations and experiences. But the truth is, you have to get still. So everything that is how do I want to say this? Not of the highest quality naturally falls away. And what I mean by that is when we force our agendas, when we force our visions, when we force our ideas, force relationships, we will never create peace. Because you can't create peace from force. Peace comes from stillness, from openness, from allowance, from saying, okay, well, let's see how the universe is going to unfold here. Let's see how this is going to work out. Let's see. Let's give it a try, right? Try to get away from that phrase try, right? Because you either are doing it or you're not. But the point that I'm trying to make is The only way you're going to trust yourself, the only way, if you're going to trust your inner knowingness of what's your truth, what's right for you, what self-love, what you're supposed to be doing, is just by doing it. It's not by speaking to anyone else. Other people can give you insights and guidance, opinions, perspectives maybe you haven't thought about, which in many times aren't a bad idea, especially if we're very emotionally charged in any way. I've been just as destructive when I was feeling very passionate and called, if you will, as if I was anxious, because those energies, that excitement and anxiousness feel very similar energetically, frequency wise, right? And it's only through our own interpretations where we say, no, I was doing this out of anxiousness because I was scared of something, versus I was excited to do this and felt guided to. For me, through my experiences, when I got super excited and about something, it was my subconscious ego trying to prevent something that I didn't want to happen. And so I looked at the positives of it and moved towards that with all my energy, with all my heart, and it wasn't until I got a redirect, which meant something happened outside of my expectation, that I had to sit back and feel the feels, learn my lessons, and then move again in a higher way than I had in the past. See, in my past, I tried to align people in my businesses that had different skill sets outside of me, which helped my businesses become successful. The challenge with that was our cores weren't the same. So when there was adversity, when there was challenge, some people ran, some people stayed. But with that happening, changed the whole dynamics of the organization or the organism. See, everything is energy, and when we really sit back and we interpret things through our own language, through our own perception, through our own truth. We look at things from the inner guru out, because we are the cause of all our effects in life, good or bad. Those are the meanings that we put on it. When we understand that life is unconditionally loving, which means it has no meaning. We humans put meaning on things to help us find acceptance in things that don't make sense to our physical senses, so we can move in a directionality beyond the third dimension of space and time. Because our eternal self, our soul self, spirit self, energetic self, however you want to look at it, is eternal, right? Comes from source, goes back to source, always connected to source. It is our human avatar that has a limited time frame on this earth as far as its physical being, but its effects can be felt for generations to come. What is history? It's people causing effect to the planet and humanity, and it's been recorded, so that's still causing an effect. Positive, negative, it depends on the interpretation of the story, how you look at it. And if you look at both sides of the truth, you find the whole truth, which means it contains both. I haven't read one story about one saint or holy person or inspirational person that didn't have a dark side. that didn't come from the darkness, and that's where they found their truth and their power, and who they really are. And for me, I didn't go to college. I didn't follow the normal way of doing things. So I identify with those people that were so-called self-made, because that was who I wanted to be. That was who I wanted to become. That's the path that I took for me, was I wanted to be able to have a deeper understanding of life, the part that I play in it, and the part that other people play in it, and work towards creating harmonious relationships, happiness, health, those types of things within our humanity. So then we are therefore taking care of the planet, as caretakers of the planet, which our indigenous brothers and sisters have taught us that is how we sustain our lives on this planet for generations beyond ourselves. It's only been a few hundred years where legacy was created about the businesses or the trusts or the buildings, or whatever it was, to create these things that people were immortalized for the parts that they played in the development of our human society. But there's so many stories throughout history of all these humans that did extraordinary things, that did things throughout their life, and we immortalize them through stories. Well, they're no different than you or I. They lived in a different time. They lived in a different experience. But the reality is their potential is just as much as our potential. And our potential is just as much as theirs. Now, how do we use it? That's up to us. And I think a lot of us, including myself, I've spent decades studying this stuff, doing self-improvement programs, and all these different things. I'm not saying like a lot of these coaches, I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that stuff, but because I spend a lot of time at the library and doing different things. I didn't invest a lot of cash flow. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars over the years, but that in the scheme of college is just, it's nothing. So I look at it more as I was investing my energy in the experience of life, so I could get to this point in my life and have experiences, both positive and negative, that allowed me to see my full potential, of how I can be constructive and how I can be destructive. And using that awareness helps me unify within myself of how do I move each and every day? How do I carry myself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, sexually, financially, all those different ways that we express ourselves energetically. When we bring all those spectrums of light together, we come into our wholeness. And the more whole we are, the more we embody our truth without necessarily having to identify with other people's teachings. Not that we can't quote them or we can't share them or relate to them, because it does help to connect with other human beings through the mind, through communication. So having outside awareness is phenomenal. But if we spend some more time looking within about ourselves, our strengths, our underdeveloped parts, we can then create strategies to enhance ourselves. And when we enhance ourselves, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we act, then the outside world will reflect that through our opportunities of our experiences. And these are everyday experiences. These aren't always going to be pinnacle, high, I traveled the Himalayas, and I went to this place for weeks, and and sat with gurus and masters and teachers. And I went here and sat with plant medicine, and it's all part of the experience of life. And all these experiences are your guru. The good, the bad, the indifferent, those are your teachings. So then the question comes from, where do you want to grow from here? How do you want to be now so you can become later in another time? And when we start asking ourselves these truths, when we sit down with these awarenesses, when we come into, okay, I'm going to surrender the outside world, and I'm just going to shut off all the influence. I don't care what's going on outside of me, because truly it doesn't affect me that much. It only affects me if I allow it to affect me. So what do I get to do to live the best version of life for myself? What practices do I need to do to have a clear mind, a clear heart, and be developing my skill sets in a way that I'm getting better each and every day in every way in the things that are important to me? If you want to learn how to grow a garden, we can sit and watch YouTube videos all day long. We can read all the books and have all the knowledge that someone else has said about it, which can be helpful. But if you don't plant your garden, you're not going to have the experience. And the beautiful thing is, if you just go ahead and plant your garden, as it's growing, things are going to come up that you're going to have to overcome. So then you can look outside of your knowledge through other people's experiences and expertise, and find solutions to those similar problems. So we don't have to know it all before we can do it. And actually, it's been my experience, the more I know about things, the harder it is to do, because you have all these other reasons why this, that, or the other is out of alignment, why this may not work, why the timing's not right now, how we need these other resources, or all those types of things. And I can tell you from my heart of hearts, I have lost a lot of time and people and resources in my life by believing in those falsities. And when I've decided to just lead my best foot forward, do the best that I could in the moment, that led me to more and more opportunities to expand myself, my awareness, my resources, and my ability to help other people overcome whatever they're going through in their life. And I'm so grateful for that. It's been really challenging, but that's the work. If I spent decades intellectualizing my stuff, and I didn't. It's been great because it's given me a great sense of knowledge. But at the same time, I kept tripping on things that I wouldn't have needed to trip on had I not tried to solve it with my mind, but actually allow it to be integrated and let it be transmuted through my actual beingness, which is how I move each and every day. And that's the wild thing about it. And it's a challenging thing about having these podcasts and coming on, I don't, there's so many talking heads out there trying to tell and generalize what's right or what's wrong for relationships or for whatever. And, those sometimes resonate with us as truth because of what we're currently going through. And that's fine. But if we hang on to that as an absolute truth, then that will become a belief system, and we will limit our truth to someone else's truth. When it comes down to the golden rule, which is in most philosophies and religions that I've studied, I've yet to find it, not in there in some way, which is to cause no harm to yourself, cause no harm to other people, to the best of your ability, right? And that means when we make mistakes, we hold ourselves accountable for it, we apologize for it, and then we create a resolution to do better. Exactly. And move on from there, because it's part of our natural growth. We came here to experience life, and to grow through life's experiences and evolve our spirit or our consciousness, which is an ongoing process. It never ends. It's a beautiful thing, which is infinite, which means we're all immortal in our own ways, right? Natalie Clark says, "Hi, Chris. The only truth is that there is no truth." Absolutely, because once you think it's truth, it's already changed. And that's part of it, right? Because truth in the mind is only a reflection of the totality of our reality. Why did I like to rock climb? Why do people like extreme sports? Those types of things. It forces you in the presence. You can't be thinking about anything else other than what you're doing in the moment. And when we practice that, same thing with, using certain plant medicines. It gives us a break from our subconscious patterning that we're in 90%, 95% of the day. So when we get a break from that, there's a sense of relief from that. And it allows us to create new neural connections, which allows us to expand. Now, it's my opinion that if we're not regulating our nervous system, then you'll be able to rewrite the truth in your head, but you will still react out of the energy. Like if someone yells at you, it was in my childhood experience. If you wanted to be heard, you had to raise your voice. Hey, Larkin.
Hey, how are you?
Great. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing wonderful.
Don't let me interrupt you.
So what I was just talking about was, we can have this truth in our mind, right? We have this belief, and we rewrite a belief, so we're like, oh, we're no longer that person or whatever. But then if somebody yells at us, for example, like in my childhood, I remember having to yell to be heard. Sometimes, if I wasn't feeling good, the louder and the more I moaned and the more I groaned, the more likelihood that my parents would listen to the fact that I was sick. So if I have that knowledge, but if somebody comes and yells at me and I react in that way and match their tone, because that's what I was used to, then I'm still in my subconscious patterning. But if I can remain grounded and centered and allow my nervous system to you can shake, you can do all that stuff, but you don't react out of it, but rather you breathe it down, you let it integrate in, you let it calm down, and then you speak from a place of centeredness. That is actually moving past those truths that we hold in our head as true, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, it does make sense. I mean, I've been coaching this for 15 years and worked on that myself for at least 10 years before that. And I think just through experience, absolutely. Just yesterday on one of the lives, I was sharing that people tend to do one or two of the things necessary in order to get the transformation or the change that they're seeking. But most people are actually changing. They're choosing change instead of transformation, and they don't really understand the difference. And then they don't understand the components of that, and they go and they get help, or they get counseling, or they get coaching or something, and they miss a lot of the parts. And a lot of times when we're missing the important aspects of something, we then turn around and say, well, this doesn't work. And just yesterday on the live, I was sharing with people that one of the most common things I see is that people don't have all the components of themselves that they're transforming. They will just go ahead and focus on one thing. So for example, they may think it's all about mindset, but then they're leaving, and it is. I mean, if you were to pick one thing, I would say mindset, because you're here in human form, and then you can let your intuitive consciousness drive that. But we have the intuitive aspects, we have the mindset aspects, and when we leave components out, components of transformation or components of healing out, then we're left saying, why didn't this work? And so I think it's very important that, in alignment with what you're talking about, that we make sure that we're not leaving parts out. It's like baking a cake. You're making a chocolate cake, and then you leave the chocolate out, or you leave the sugar out, or you leave the eggs out. You're not going to have the chocolate cake that you wanted. So I think when people are, again, it goes back to looking at yourself, looking within. I have people ask me all the time, well, why do I keep picking the same types of relationships? Why do I keep picking the same guys? Why do I keep picking the same girls? And the truth is that it doesn't really, it has less to do with who you're picking, honestly, and it has more to do with you and what you see as the qualities that you're looking for, what you see or believe in someone that are the qualities that are a good match for you, or that you misunderstand what that means, right? So a lot of people will see aggressive behavior as meaning they're going to be safe with that person, instead of understanding that gentleness is strength and kindness. Or they might see a person who allows themselves to be vulnerable while they're dating. They might see that as weakness. They do that continuously, and then they choose people that are not emotionally available, right? Mm-hmm. So the habits and the things that we continuously see in our lives are pointers, they're road signs to our inner selves, what we need to shift inwardly. And it doesn't mean we have to completely change as a person. It means we have to be more self-aware, and then be aware of our thoughts so that we can create a new mindset. So I think that fits right in with what you were sharing, Chris. And
yeah,
you had so many good points there.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, and I think I mean, and we've talked about this, a bunch throughout, all these episodes. The thing is if we do something based on somebody else's, let's call it truth, whatever it is, right? Because we could call it perspective, opinion, information, whatever. And they sell us on an idea. And we go, okay, we're going to go do this because I'm lost. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want in life. Everything that I've ever done has just been empty and hollow, and it's had no meaning. And I'm just gonna follow this person because they seem to have it going on, right? They're gonna be the change in the universe. It's not the 8 billion people on the planet making an effort. It's just one person. they're going to change it all. We're going to give them all this power and all this glory. And this one person is going to change how everybody thinks, how all policies are written, how the government acts, how the commercial the commercialization system is. Everything's going to change because of this one person, because of, and we give our power away. And then they take advantage of that. And then we get butt hurt because they didn't do what they said they were going to do. And we gave them our power and energy so they could rise up, if you will. And then they didn't do the right thing based on what they or we agreed on. And that happens all the time. We've all had relationships, we've all had friendships, we've all had different jobs and coworkers, and that kind of stuff happen. And we get upset when someone else does it. But how many times do we let ourselves off the hook for doing the very same thing? And that's the point that I want to get to the inner guru. When we're in a relationship and someone is triggering us in a certain way, or they act out in a certain way, that is because we're doing the same in some way that we are yet to be aware of, because we're not willing to look at it within ourselves. And if we can heal that within ourselves, usually, from my own experience, the things in the relationship shift naturally without needing much coercion or communication about it, or the relationship drifts apart because it's time to go on different journeys. But the point that I was trying to make is, if you don't come from in here, it takes a really long time to get back to yourself and trust yourself again, because you didn't, and you gave your power away, and you gave your trust away. And it's been also in my experience, when you trust that everything's going to happen the way that it needs to, and you're strong enough, you're resilient enough, you're capable enough, resourceful enough, whatever happens, you're going to be okay, and you're going to get on the other side of it. Life changes for you.
Yeah, I think a great topic, maybe for next week, would be, how do we give our power away and reclaim it? We're kind of talking about how to reclaim it today, but
right.
But I don't think most people understand how they give their power away in the first place.
Right.
And it would be great to dedicate a whole session to that, because the truth is everybody thinks they're doing their best. If you really sit down and they really journal, or you really talk to them, you might get them to admit, okay, maybe I'm not, right? Maybe I can do better. Or maybe they know they can do better, but they believe they're trying their best. And we tend to confuse those things. If we're struggling and we feel like we're trying our best in the moment, then we think we're doing our best. And we don't understand that doing our best is beyond that comfort zone, right? We don't understand that, there's a lack of connection. There's a lack of linking what it is that we're actually doing and how we're responding versus our feelings and emotions inside, and the actual way we come across and the choices and behaviors that we make, right? So we can feel like we're insecure, or we're unimportant or insignificant to someone, or we're afraid that we don't mean anything to them. And that can cause us to treat them unkindly. That can cause us to behave defensively. Mm-hmm. And then they don't treat us the way we want to be treated. And we say, see, you don't treat us the way we want to be treated. But what are you doing because of that initial fear? When you guys hear Chris talking about, look within, like what's actually going on with you, what's going on within you. And if you really look at that, it's triggering the behavior that's probably causing either who you're choosing to be around, that is causing the relationship stuff you don't like, or it's causing that people to treat you differently. If you felt happy and secure, you would be interacting with those people differently. You wouldn't be so defensive. But if you're feeling insecure, whether they're treating you that way or not, you're going to behave in a defensive manner that causes people to treat you the very way you don't want to be treated. So I think a lot of people don't see the cause and effect. And it has to start with awareness of what you're thinking, what you're feeling, where, how are you identifying with yourself? This is why you always hear me say, you have to remember who you are. It's not about changing who you are to please other people or to keep that person in a relationship. It's a combination of remembering who you are as a soul, as a being, what's innate to you, and then choosing to be and create the version of you that is most in alignment with that. And I think that would be a really powerful topic, because I don't think most people realize all the different ways they give their power away. By being indecisive, by not being aware of their habits and choosing different ones, by not taking hold of their power of choice, by trying to please people because they're afraid of being rejected. There's so many ways we give our power away by not being aware of our emotions or what they mean and letting them rule us. There are countless ways that you give your power away every single day and you don't even know it. So self-awareness is a great place to start.
Right. And I'd even say to say a lot of that, what is your best? Well, how are you showing up every day? That's your best. Yep. In that moment. Like if you want to do different, then just do different. There's really not a judgment as much as there is a discernment on, it's kind of like a silly thing. Like, when you're outside and you're uncomfortable in whatever weather it is, well, then change, like go change your clothes, and be more in alignment with what's currently going on. It's always funny to me. You hear people in the summertime always complaining about the heat, and in the wintertime you're always hearing about how cold they are all the time. And it's like, well, maybe you should dress differently. like maybe if you quit, I've been doing an experiment for the last few years, for the last, I don't know, 6 years. I don't know how long I've had the car, but it's never had air conditioning. I think it's capable, and I could probably get it fixed and have air conditioning, but I chose not to because I want to be able to accept life as it is rather than manipulate it in a way for my comfort. And that's just in my car, in the house, we'll run the AC for a little bit to knock the humidity out of the air. But, I try not to use a lot of that stuff, and personally try to live very in nature and not using our technology to modify my comfort. Because there's something in myself that feels that there's something coming, where we better know how to enjoy nature as it is, rather than trying to manipulate and control it through our human devices. So
that's innate anyway. That should be innate in everyone, and it's been taken away from people.
Yeah, I mean, Wim Hof talks about it all the time, like how doing all these things, the air conditioning and stuff like that has effects on your health and all that kind of stuff, because your body's made to do those things. Your body's made to sweat. And if you're not sweating, you're not properly detoxing, and those types of things. So You know, it's really getting back down to, you know, trusting your inner guru is that the only thing that you're competing with is who you believe you were and who you should be. Because I
Yep.
think once we find acceptance, and you know, I could be that if I chose, you know, if I chose to do some different things differently, then I could be in that version of myself. Totally could do that. I'm choosing not to right now. That's my freedom. And you know, to really be able to get into that without the anxiety or fear of consequences, or not having enough, or not achieving enough, or wasting life, or you know, anything else. Like, I find a lot of, you know, my girlfriend and I we did a shamanic breath class this weekend, and you know, I love the journeys; they're amazing, and it was a great time. And we were talking about, you know, the ceremonies that I hold, and you know, one of the things that the facilitator did really well was hold a container, and he asked really good questions, and we were in the circle, and it was very formatted, and it was lovely. um, and I said, yep, that's a great way to do it. However, if you look at the ceremonies that I've had where we didn't have that, what did you see? And she's like, oh, people were healing, people were laughing, people were connecting, people were, you know, on the right, you know, maybe in a little clique, not as a whole group, but where they felt comfortable. And so there was transformation there as well. And I said, so that's kind of the double-edged sword. Like, yes, we can control everything and have this really formatted, structured thing, and it's going to have positive results. Or we can have this free-flowing thing, and it's going to have similar results, but less conceptualized, you know, um, and less mindset-wise, you know, of like, did we meet our mark, or did we get to have the experience? And that's some of the stuff that I've been working for myself, for, you know, a decade or so, because, you know, even though that I've had great results in some of the things that I've done in my life, and you know, people say I should be proud of myself, I'm like, you know, I did a thing, and that was the thing that I did, and it was awesome. I'm glad to have the experience, but when I was in that thing, I didn't feel like that was what I was supposed to be doing. I didn't feel whole. I didn't feel all those things. So even though I was met with success on the societal standpoint, I wasn't feeling the inner success that I was seeking. And sometimes I find that inner success more frequently by sitting, not doing anything, watching nature, than I do most other things. You know, I feel super successful with the garden we grew, and we put time and energy into it, but I don't force the things to grow. We just create the environment to allow it to grow in the best way that it can, and it does its thing. And I think if we look at that from our own self, of if we can just show up and be the nurturer, the caregiver, the person that we want not only to be, but to receive in our life, finding that inner guru absolutely happens. But it takes time and it takes practice, because there's a lot of stuff that comes up that makes us think, oh, there was a sign, there was a signpost, there was this thing here, and I wanted to avoid this, you know, this penalty or this thing, so I did this to, you know, I just watched a thing the other day about, you know, some of the legal things that we can do to legally reduce our taxes, and you know, the jurisdiction that the government has on us. That's totally out there. We're not aware of that because the government doesn't want us to know, because then we're all gonna do what we can not to pay into the system like most of the people of great affluence that's what they do. So anyway, what are your thoughts on that, Larkin? Are you paused?
Oh, I think the bottom line here, guys, is that over, even though it's almost out of battery, and see if that helps. I think the important thing here, guys, in the bottom line, and you hear us refer to this all the time, is no matter what you label it, your guru, your inner guru, your higher self, your whatever it is, the bottom line is our ultimate reality, when whether we're in this world or not, comes from within us. It is always a reflection of within us, whether we're incarnated or we're not. I thought it was interesting that Natalie said the total truth is that there is no truth. Well, actually, there is truth. There are truths. There are universal truths. And by Natalie, there are universal truths, and there are ultimate truths. Do we all experience in the same way, in the same form? No. But the more consciously awake you become, the more you realize, yes, there are ultimate truths. And there is whatever perception you are vibrating at and coming from. But that does not mean we have to experience it all the way. But, we don't even have to think that big. We need to remember who we are as souls, as beings. And that doesn't mean that you have to remember who you were in a past life. It doesn't mean any of that. It's not about, what you want or what you can manifest or who you have to be or go finding yourself. It's not even about any of that. All of that has to do with thought and cognitive thinking and self-judgment, as Chris was talking about, the judgment and the identification of, the best version of yourself. Well, the best version of yourself may not be what you think is the best version of you. It's not about what your egoic mind judges it to be. It's about you following the universal codes that your soul knows. Be kind, be honest, treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Gratitude, forgiveness. If we follow those keys and principles, no matter what we think of ourselves, we cannot help but align to be the best version of ourselves. Because what is the best version of ourselves? It's just a label. But it's also a frequency that is most aligned with the most conscious version of the beings that we are. We give up a lot of that consciousness when we come into this world, and then we try to replace it with trying to figure things out, with manifesting. We want money, we want love, we want possessions, we want success, and all of those things are replacing what you already are as a soul. Because you forget when you come here, you have amnesia, you forget, and to God, which we already are. But we have the illusion that we're not. We have the illusion of separateness. We have the illusion of imperfection. So since our soul remembers this when we're here, we intuitively know this. So we spend our whole lives struggling to get back to that which we will be the moment we leave this world. The moment we transform back into non-physical. And even then, there's an ongoing evolution. So ultimately, we take our power back through choices. That is how we give our power away, and that is how we get it back. because we're here in human form. And what follows those choices come from the thoughts and the habits that we have that are all energy, because everything is energy first. Everything in the universe is energy. You can't get away from that. Mm-hmm. So if you want to intentionally use, guide, and direct energy here in physical form, it's through your choices, and it's through the habits of those choices. And it sounds simple, but nobody does it. This is the stuff that takes me 2 to 3 years to get my clients to do. And, we have to remember that we each have a unique and individual path. It is not the same for everyone. And so we can learn the key components, but we will apply them differently. And this is where Chris was talking about trusting yourself. How do you learn to trust yourself? Because the one person you will always be with, no matter what, the one soul, the one energy, the one being you'll always be with, no matter what, is you. You can't ever get away from you. So you need to learn to be able to trust yourself, because you won't always have the same people around you in your life. You're not always going to have the same circumstances. You need to, no matter what, trust yourself. And that comes through allowing yourself to make mistakes. That comes through getting to know who you are and trusting that you mean your best, trusting in a habit and pattern at which you function and resonate. Okay? So I will give you my example before I shut up here, okay? When I was becoming aware of this and learning to do this, I knew that in the end, it did not matter what anyone said to me. If I was rejected or what they said or what they misunderstood, because my one and only responsibility was to respond in the highest version of myself. And to me, that meant, what are my rules and principles for living, right? To first pause and not react, to give myself time to process, okay? That was one thing. I have a system in which I do this, that I know and trust myself. No matter what anybody says or does to me, my only responsibility is how I respond. Am I reacting or am I responding? Is it kind? Does it need to cross the lines of kind? Do I have to protect myself or someone else? But either way, my self-awareness of my own reactions, what triggers me, how, if I'm reacting or responding, that all falls in line with being my responsibility. And as long as I do that, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. I have to be aware of and responsible for my own feelings, thoughts, and choices. And when you learn to trust that about yourself, and you learn where you need to make those adjustments, you begin to trust yourself. And that's something you each have to stumble across in your own way, but it's very important, and it's more than worth doing.
Right.
Chris, this was a great topic, and I think it leads us to a lot of fun things for next week if we want to carry on deeper with this.
Yeah. I think this is definitely a good start of definitely that, right? And like you were saying, taking your power back, which is just making a choice. Sometimes people will make choices for us, but the choice still comes down to how are we going to respond? Are we going to get bitter, or are we going to take that as, okay, well, I'm just going to go out and, just for the lack of terms, better, that was one thing in the shamanic breath work, to stay open, it's like, well, my intention is this or better, right? Like I want this experience or better, to try to keep that open. But then at the same time, I'm like, for me, I want the experience, because whether I think it's better or worse than another experience doesn't mean that's not the experience that I'm supposed to be having in this moment, for whatever reason. And I won't know that until later on. That for me, you know, and I say it in a joking form of, I'm not smarter than the universe, I'm not smarter than the collective consciousness, is really what I'm saying, which means, yeah, I have a part to play, but again, it's one drop to the ocean. And so what I think is most important right now, what I think I need to be doing right now might not be for my highest good or for the highest good of the collective. And so if I allow the higher frequencies in, then I can shift my reality based on that. So it's definitely interesting, and we're gonna have to definitely dive into this deeper.
We are, and you know, and the other thing too is that made me think of something, Chris, that you know, when we are we're the best version of ourselves that we know to be at the moment, we are helping the collective.
Right.
And so, you know, that's something to keep in mind for you guys too. You know, it's not all these things we put on the pressure for ourselves. You know, it's, you know, what are your intentions behind it? You know, maybe you do something extra kind for somebody, but it's only because you want them to owe you,
right?
Or it makes you feel secure. Does that mean that that kind deed has the same value as if you just did it because you wanted to just help? See, you did it because you didn't want anything back. You weren't going to get anything out of it. This is how you put stuff, energy in your escrow. And the thing is, guys, and I know we got to get off now, but just keep this in mind as you go through your day. Without the results that you think you want or don't want, without what you want, if you take away what you want, which is what we're all trained to focus on, what choice would you make then? Just out of the goodness of your heart? And it doesn't mean you got to be a saint, and it doesn't mean you can't choose to do things for yourself. But part of the reason we're telling you guys to get to know who you are, remember who you are, is because your inner compass will always guide you that way. When you're in touch with yourself, you don't have to overthink any of this because you just know. And we're excited to pick this back up next week and take this to a whole new level. Yeah. Great topic today, Chris. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Larkin. Enjoy the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and checking out the replay. Make sure to subscribe to our channels on Facebook and YouTube, the Enhance Your World Show. And we'll see you next Tuesday at 12 o'clock.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.